Okay. Now I gotta get my mouse on the right screen.
That's my old neighborhood.
There we go.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's is it Hollywood Heights?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Is
Oh,
that your
wait,
house?
I think it's sharing. Are you seeing the little side slide
We're
Yes.
seeing the
on
major
this?
the navigating the preservation process.
Okay, it's for some reason sharing the wrong screen. Here we go. Okay,
There we
here
go.
we are. So you can see it nice and
Yep.
big.
Yep.
Okay. Oops, here we go. So, to start off with, I am gonna just kind of go into the different types of zoning that we have here in the city of Dallas to start off with. So you have your base zoning, which is your residential. You're either R5, R7.5, which I believe is most of your neighborhood, R10, and then R1 acre, and it just goes on from there. You've got commercial, you've got industrial. So this is your base zoning. This is what manages like your lot coverage, your setbacks, that sort of stuff. And then we have your PDs and NSOs, and those are very similar to the base zoning, but it allows people to kind of customize a little bit more as far as the development criteria is concerned. So if you are not okay with your current setbacks, this, a PD or an NSO would be the way you want to go.
And what do those stand for?
PD is called a Planned Development District. So there are quite a few of them in the city of Dallas. In fact, I think there's over like 500, but they're currently trying to fix the code so that we can lessen the number of PDs that we have and kind of fix some of our zoning. NSO stands for a Neighborhood Stabilization Overlay. And this is basically you've got your base zoning, and then on top of it, you would put an NSO overlay. So if you wanted to, so say the typical height for most single family structures is 30 feet in R75. But if you wanted all your structures to only be a maximum of say 25 feet, or if you wanted to allow up to 45 feet, you could go and get an NSO, and you could have that customization for your area.
Okay.
So conservation and historic are where we begin to add those architectural components. So if for some reason you guys are not interested in the architectural component side, I would recommend an NSO for you guys. But it seems like you guys are leaning towards more the architecture is really what you're wanting to protect. So the comparison between conservation and historic, I would say we are much less strict on things like materials, and we don't necessarily like impact the entirety of the structure. So in a historic district, if you are going to remodel your home, say you want to add an addition on the back, the Landmark Commission has the final say on whether your project will be allowed. We don't have a border commission. Every project that comes in is handled by staff. And typically the architectural components, we're only going to have those specific architectural requirements on what's called a wraparound. For most of our districts, that is inclusive of the front facade and a part way down the side facades. For most of our districts, it's the first 25 feet. We do have a few districts that go to the midpoint. And then we have a couple of districts that are specifically, they only want the architecture specifically applied to street-facing facades. So the front facade, or if you are a corner lot, then you would have two sides that would be protected on both of those street sides. So conservation and historic do require the architectural component. So that will be kind of a non-negotiable discussion point. We do have to have those discussions if you guys do initiate for conservation.
So I have a quick question.
Mhm.
If somebody applies for a permit to do a
Mhm.
project,
Mhm.
my understanding on the historic side is there's some sort of board or
The Landmark
group that,
Commission.
yeah,
Yep.
okay, so they would
Mhm.
approve it. Is there something similar on the conservation side, or is it?
Nope, it's all done by staff. And if for some reason you disagree with a decision we made, maybe we have to deny something because the ordinance that y'all have narrowed down to doesn't allow something. So, like say for instance, in Conservation District number 6, Hollywood Santa Monica, they do not allow the painting of brick in that district. So unless you were already painted prior to the ordinance coming in, you cannot paint new brick. So we have to deny those. Now, we have had some people go to the Board of Adjustment on appeal to try to make a case as to why they should be allowed to paint, and you're allowed to do that. But it like that's a kind of a 50-50 toss up as to whether you might get something approved if we denied it. So there's no
And
board. It's all done by staff.
are they appealing to the staff or to the neighborhood?
So they're appealing technically to the Board of Adjustment is what they're appealing to. So
Okay.
they're kind of the legal mechanism that staff has to continue applications if the applicant feels that a decision was made in error.
So a question I have
Mhm.
is, you said there were some non-negotiables if you go this way, and then you
Mhm.
were talking about it didn't have to be a tourist. So the non-negotiables were that the front facade and the side facade, if your corner, are non-negotiables, that they have to stay historically correct. Is what I heard?
No,
Oh,
no. So the what we call the building elevations, which is where you guys are going to restrict that architecture, that will be a discussion that we have. But that discussion has to happen. That's the non-negotiable, is that we have to have the discussion about it. So typically when we come in with architectural stuff, kind of the big ticket items that we always want to go over are things like front porches, windows, and chimneys, and then roof form and pitch. Those are kind of the big ticket items that go with your architecture. Now, some people or some neighborhoods, they want to be much more restrictive. They want to discuss, the design of your dormers, whether or not you can enclose a front porch, whether or not you can put plate glass windows in the front, or whether you can have an accessory dwelling unit. There are things that go on the petition, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. You'll see kind of the list, that the things that you have to have on the petition that we have to discuss, and then there are things that are optional that you guys can add it for more customization.
thank you.
Yeah. So of course, benefits to being in a conservation. We really try to safeguard that architecture for the most part, and we really do create stabilization. If y'all are worried about, impending development coming in, typically that tends to turn them away if there are, because they want to develop a lot, they want to max everything out, right? They want to max out their lot coverage and their square footage and their setbacks and everything. But depending on how you guys want your ordinance to be, you can kind of restrict that and make it, I don't want to say make it unappealing for developers to come in, but that's really kind of what happens. With CD6, they required that any new construction that comes in that district has to be a Tudor style. So if you're a developer and you say, well, a Tudor style doesn't give me the height and doesn't give me the square footage of a house that I want, then typically they're going to go find a different district and they're going to build their McMansion somewhere else. So those are some of the ways that you can kind of use to rein in some of that development, especially if you're getting some really big stuff coming in the neighboring areas. So this is kind of, I know it looks really small. This is kind of a general timeline for the process. And I know it looks like a lot. It's not as daunting as it seems. A lot of these, they happen in batches. So like these original, the first, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these first 6 steps, that will all be before we ever officially meet in a room, right? For those pre-application meetings. So some of these steps, they happen kind of in groups. So it's not quite as daunting as it looks. I know it looks really long.
And point using your cursor, show us where we are right now.
Let's see. So I guess right here you're kind of in between these two. So you're forming your neighborhood committee. That's kind of the step that you're at. We also have received a determination of eligibility, and right now that is being used as your placeholder in line because there are quite a few districts ahead of you. Right now on our timeline, we're looking at not being able to initiate you guys until maybe October or November of 2028, which I know is a long way off. Yeah, we've got about 8 districts ahead of you. So we wanted to make sure that we had a determination in time to kind of hold your place in line.
So here's a question, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping way ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Given that timeline, because that's
it's a long time.
Which are we protected in any way because we've made the application to say that? So somebody could come in the next 3 years, which is part of what the city's driving towards, right?
Yeah.
So we have nothing we can do in 3 years to stop somebody from building, for instance, a duplex on an empty lot.
Correct.
Or taking that, and there's no appeal we can make. There's no.
Nope. The only type of zoning that puts a moratorium on the ability to modify your property is historic. And that's because they have to make sure that when they codify the ordinance, that the structures that are in that district are still meeting the historic standard. So if there are too many changes that would make it kind of fail to meet that standard, then they may have to deny the ordinance. That's the only one that really puts a moratorium on that sort of stuff.
Melissa, this is Tony, when we submitted the determination of eligibility application, I think that was back, David, in June, right?
About that.
And I know that some of the documentation that we were following to do that said that we'd get a response within 60 days. So obviously we're outside of that 60-day window, and we'll definitely, on the timeline that you've just identified, be way outside of that window.
Right.
Is that 60 days is that a guideline, or is that an ordinance that the city has passed? I mean, how much teeth is within that 60-day note in the documentation?
So the 60 days is once we accept a fully complete determination. So there may be still some edits. Obviously, Trevor and I will want to go through the inventory and, verify anything that you guys have submitted. But technically, what we try to do is when we know that we're ready to initiate you guys, we will we'll start these conversations back up with you, and any edits that have to happen, we'll make sure that we can get that so that we can get that initial approval letter to you guys right away. And then we can jump right into those pre-application meetings. So technically, while we have the determination of eligibility, it hasn't been officially accepted yet because we haven't been prepared to accept it. Just because we know that like we can't run a third district. Right now we're already doing 2 districts kind of in tandem. We're on the kind of last legs of Stevens Park Village, and we've just gotten to the petition leg with Kids Springs.
So just for clarification,
Mm-hmm.
you're running 2 at a time. And so
Yes.
in 2028, we will just start the process with you.
Yes. So right now, we've got the 2, and then we're at the beginning of the year, probably in March and April, we've got 1 more district that we'll be initiating. And then in 2027, we've got 3 of them. Now, I will say that we're hoping that once we have some new staff in, and we're hoping that once we get them up to speed, that we'll be able to start running more of these meetings in tandem. So there's, of course, the possibility that we may be able to get to you guys earlier than that. But that's going to depend on our training and the amount of, availability that we'll have to be able to run those meetings.
And is there anything we can do that we haven't yet to expedite the timeline, either with the determination or any other information that we haven't provided?
Unfortunately, no. We have to take the district's first come, first serve. And that this just happened to be that there were like 8 districts that had already gotten in ahead of you guys. Yeah, it's been a crazy year or 2 actually for districts that are wanting to come online, certainly.
Okay.
There's 8 in front of us, and you'll deal with those 8, and then in November or October or November of 2028, we will, according to the chart you had on the other page, we will just now be starting at the point at box number.
Yeah, you guys would be starting right about here. But before we get to that October, November timeframe, I'll initiate conversations with you again, because we'll have to have you guys finding a venue to house the pre-application meetings and get dates that you think, most of the neighborhood will be able to show up on. So we'll initiate those conversations a little bit before that.
Well, I'm sure everybody says this, but you have our commitment that we will make every effort to be ahead of the process, not within it or behind it. So
yeah,
anything
absolutely.
we can do to be, compliant, we will do our best to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on any of the rules that you're talking about or the standards for the neighborhood, can our group start that process with the neighborhood, or do you all have to be engaged while that's happening?
Nope, you can have as many conversations amongst yourselves as you want. And I highly recommend it. I highly recommend, keeping the neighborhood engaged. The time can be used wisely for those people that are kind of the naysayers, and maybe you can have the time to kind of wear them down a little bit, right? If you really want this to go through, because sometimes all it takes is a wine walk, or have, and just kind of keep the conversation going. And so that's always kind of in the back of their mind. And then when we do get to those pre-application meetings, they're not quite so antsy because they don't fully know what is going on. They've already heard, oh yeah, we've talked about conservation district, and yeah, I have some questions, but I'm kind of on board with what the neighborhood committee is kind of putting forth, sort of.
So historically, how long does it take to get from the box? So if we start in October, how long does it take historically to get from that box to the end?
Well, it depends. It depends on how many of the standards that you guys want to put on the petition to discuss. And it also depends on how much consensus there is among the neighborhood. If there is something that is very contentious, we could end up talking about that one item for 3 meetings, or if everybody is in agreement, maybe we can get this done in under 5 meetings for the whole thing. So, like with
So that-
Stevens, so like with Stevens Park Village, we're kind of in the home stretch. They have had 6 meetings so far, and we've already have the draft ordinance in with the city attorney. So they will have 2 more meetings to review that draft, and then we're on to CPC and city council. So they've managed to do it in a short time.
So if we on our own as a group were able to have consensus standards by October of 2028, so I know you go through your meetings, but we have gone through all the standard, or whatever it is that we have decided we're going to make the standards be. Does that help you move the process along faster?
Oh, sure. I mean, if we come into those meetings and everybody is already in agreement with all of the things that are going to be on the petition item, then yeah, I mean, we basically ask the question, okay, so does anybody want to discuss this? Everybody says, no, we're fine. This is what we want. And okay, let's move on to the next item on the petition. It can be that quick.
Melissa,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but is there any way we can start the petition process before you're ready for it to begin?
Well, no, because the petition process is part of it. It's part of this timeline where we have to have we have to have at least 2 pre-application meetings before you can request petitions. And there's a timeline, which is why we're holding on to the determination of eligibility, because once we activate that determination, we have, about 2 months to be able to schedule those pre-application meetings. We have to have those meetings, and then you have about 10 days to get those petition items to us. And I have some more slides about all that stuff a little bit later. In fact, actually, let
you go through this a little. Thank you.
Yeah. So for establishing a CD, really it starts with a determination of eligibility, which you guys already have most of. We just have to kind of go through and see if anything needs editing. Once we verify that, then we can do the pre-application meetings. And of course, again, we're looking for consensus on items. So after that final pre-application meeting, technically the code gives us 14 days for you to request petition or to give you the petitions. I put 10 days here because the reality is we as staff need at least a day or 2 to be able to put that petition in writing and to print it all out for you guys. So 14 days is cutting it real close. We would literally only have the 1 day. So we cut it into 10 days. So if you come into those pre-application meetings and you guys already know for the most part what you're going to have on those petitions, that's great. That's absolutely great. That's kind of where we want you to be. So absolutely be having those conversations with your neighbors, between now and the time we initiate. So once we pass on the petitions, you guys will have up to 12 months to get all of the signatures. You do not have to take the full 12 months. If you get it all done in a week and you want to turn it in, then great, we can move on. If it takes you longer, you need to have up to 58% either of the land area or 58% of the property ownership signature. And we'll verify that once we get those petitions in. Now, I will say if you get up to 75% of the neighborhood to sign the petitions, then the fee that they typically charge for the zoning change is waived, and that's typically about a $2,400-$2,500 fee. So it's well worth it to try to get, you know, a majority on board. But I will say, like, be honest with people. Like, don't just say the good things to try to get them on board, because sometimes what tends to happen is some people from the neighborhood will come to a meeting and then they realize that, well, this has actually been initiated, and they feel like they've been given kind of another story to get them to sign the petition. So that's not what we want. We always want them to be honest, that they understand if they're signing that petition, then they are agreeing to initiate to a conservation district. So throughout this process, once we get the petitions back, we'll come back to you guys to schedule the actual post-application meetings, and that's where we'll start discussing the things that are actually on those petitions. And once that is done, we come back, we do a conceptual plan, we let you guys review that. A conceptual plan is basically where we take everything that we heard from you and we kind of summarize it in pieces. You know, what did you guys discuss about lot coverage? What did you guys discuss about the setbacks? What did you guys discuss about, you know, where do you want garages located? And we'll say, hey, did we get this right? And if you guys agree that we got it right, then we can come back and we'll start drafting the ordinance language. If there's anything at that point that you think we got wrong, then we'll have that discussion and we'll kind of edit it until you think that we got it right. And then we'll come back. We do a draft review meeting of the ordinance once that's been completed. If there's anything at that time, you know, let us know if there are any concerns about the language, and we'll come back and edit anything. And then off to CPC and then City Council for codification. So as far as the items on the petition, these are the things that we have to at least have the discussions on. So these will all be required items that are on your petition. Now, there are things on here that you may not be worried, like Florida area ratio. That's not one that is typically required in most districts. So the conversation may be, hey, are you guys concerned with Florida area ratio? Everybody says no. Then we move the conversation on to the next piece. We have to have that conversation because it's going to be on this list, but the conversation doesn't have to be long if everybody is in consensus.
And if we want to get ahead of this, is there a place online that we can get the content to have that conversation, to identify what it is these are?
I can send
what
you,
these mean?
Yeah, I can send you a sample petition and, you know, peruse it for as long as you need. And if you guys need anything kind of clarified, because some of these terms are not necessarily easy to define for everybody. You know, we're not all architects, and some of the terms are fairly new to some people. So if anybody needs a definition, or you have a question about, well, how would this actually be regulated? Like, what does this mean? You know, please send me those questions. I'm happy to give out whatever information you guys need beforehand. I want to make sure that everyone on the, not just the neighborhood committee, but everyone in the neighborhood is as informed as they want to be.
Right. Okay. Yeah, as much information as if you have stuff right now, you can send to me. We'll work our way through it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
A quick question, because I think when we talked about this as a group, there is a Rollins Street has a very restrictive kind of conservation area, and these other two streets didn't join that. And I don't know if this is the goal or not, but if the goal is to keep from having a lot turned into a duplex or a sixplex or a fourplex or something like that, are there certain one of these that have a higher priority to making it unattractive for a builder to try to squeeze a duplex or fourplex into a neighborhood?
Well, I'm
This
not
is single family,
sure.
right?
I mean, you guys can change that if you want. It's technically your area is zoned as R75, which is single family. But like we've had some districts that wanted to allow by right accessory dwelling units for like those mother-in-law suites in your garage or something like that. So they actually put that in their ordinance that they wanted to allow for that.
Well, our
If
neighborhood
you,
already has a
right.
duplex in it and
Mhm.
also has separate rental apartments in the back
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
also has some Airbnb units in their back of their house.
Right. I would say that in the interim, because we are not going to be able to initiate you guys for a while, if that was something that you are really worried about in the immediate future, you may want to first initiate an NSO. And I can get you that information on that stuff because you may their process is a lot quicker because they're just development criteria, but they may give you the ability to do that sort of one thing in the interim so that you can at least retain that. And NSO again wouldn't cover any of the architectural stuff, but if you can't make a lot of multifamily, it may be unappealing to a lot of developers. So,
Well, at present, right now, that would not be in compliance with the variance. They'd have to request or that it would not be in compliance with the zoning. They'd have to request a variance
oh,
right
for a
now, right?
duplex. Okay,
Yeah.
so you guys are probably fine then, I would think. So is that
But
other
shouldn't it be
duplexes
fine
that
because somebody could build something besides their house and you'd still have two houses on one lot?
Well, would that would that comply with R 7.5?
No,
they'd
it's
still
single
need a
family.
variance.
So you
if
can't,
it's
yeah,
if
you
it's separate, it's considered an accessory dwelling unit, which I know that the city is leaning towards trying to allow by right because that's sort of that gentle density that they talk about. If you listen to any of the information that came out during like Forward Dallas, um, they're trying to allow for those types of things so that people can kind of live and grow on their properties. And not have to move or sell their property because their family no longer fits in it. As far as duplexes go, where it's attached, um, I I would have to look at your PD and see what it says about that. I know that there are a lot of single family districts also allow for duplexes. So I'd have to read the language of y'all's specific or PD.
Okay.
So these are the things that must be regulated. These are the items that can also be added. So these ones are not required, but if you want to add them onto the petition, and this is not a comprehensive list, I'll send you guys a copy of the petition when I send you all the video link. And you'll be able to see how long that petition can get. It can get pretty intense. So like when we did the Lakewood expansion, they wanted every single thing on their petition. And I can tell you that we had to do about 18 meetings with them. And it was exhausting. It was a slog. So I really recommend, really contemplating what it is you guys want to sort of manage with this ordinance. And the sort of the fluff things that really don't matter to you guys, let's not have those discussions, if it's something that's super contentious, just know that it may be something that doesn't get put in or maybe it does.
And give us a for instance in that list.
Let's
Massing?
see.
Like what? I don't even know what that is.
Well, massing is basically the sizing of the structure, and actually that can get a little bit contentious sometimes. So, like in the M streets, they are at least in M Streets, Greenland Hills, and CD9, they are predominantly Tudor structures in that neighborhood. And the way that their ordinance is laid out is that the first 25 feet of that structure that has to maintain that Tudor look. But once you get back there, you get past that 25 feet, you can put on second story additions. You can really max out everything all the way to your setbacks and your lot coverage. And a lot of people have done that. And I actually have some slides coming up that might show you a little bit better about that. So like this is M Streets, things that are really going to drive the conversations. And I always try to tell people this early on, is that when we're having the conversations specifically about the architectural stuff, it has a lot to do with patterns, right? The patterns are what makes your neighborhood cohesive, right? And makes it look like a neighborhood. So even though these are two completely different districts, they're close enough, but you can see the patterns that are replicated, right? You've got a chimney, a chimney, a chimney, a chimney, a chimney. You've got grouped windows, grouped windows, grouped windows, right? There are all these things that are consistent throughout the architecture. And those are going to be the things that are probably going to be the most important for you guys to try to regulate. You know, because that's really what makes your neighborhood your neighborhood. Unlike this one where they have no protections, right? This is the historic district on this side, and then immediately after the boundary of the historic district, directly after this one, you can see what happened, right? It used to be a nice little area here. There was a low density apartment complex here, and now they're stuck with this huge thing in their backyard, which a lot of people are terrified of, right? So when we come in, this is the kind of thing that we try to help prevent, to make sure that like these big things aren't coming in. Belmont District, again, you can see there's a consistency and sort of a harmony in the architecture. Even though these two streets are completely on opposite sides of the district, you can see there's harmony in the architecture that makes it look like a cohesive neighborhood. Where you get here, you get these sort of out of character new builds that you can tell if you're driving down the street, oh, that's definitely new. It doesn't fit into the neighborhood, right? Because it doesn't have those patterns of those original structures that really made the neighborhood what it was. Different kinds of development. This is why Stevens Park Village came to us, actually, is because of these townhomes down here. They had this sort of, again, that sort of middle gentle density, low-lying density. And then a few years later, now we've got these huge townhomes that are looming in the backyards of quite a few of these properties. And they're trying to protect this from encroaching even more and coming into their district. And these are like the different patterns that we look for. You can see that, you know, things are fairly consistent and they all have sort of front walkways. Most of them have their driveways are all on the right side of the lot. So little patterns like that a lot of people don't really consider when they're discussing their neighborhood. You know, to start looking at that and to start recognizing those patterns is going to help those discussions move a lot quicker, I think. And again, just another neighborhood for patterns. So this is a sample of the petition, and I know it's a little bit tiny. I'll send you a copy of an actual petition form in my email, but this is a full petition on the side. So you could have all of these things up for discussion. But of course, not all of them are required. What we want when we're looking for petition language is we don't want it to be too broad where you're saying, well, we want to regulate fences. Okay, well, what is it about fences? And you say, well, we want every single fence to be only 6 feet in height. It has to be a wood board-on-board fence, and we are not allowing fences in a front yard. That's a little bit too specific for us. That that puts the conversation in a corner that we can't get out of. What we would want to see on the petition is, okay, we want to discuss fences. We want to discuss the height of the fences. We want to discuss the locations of where those fences will be allowed. And we want to discuss materials and keep it a little bit more vague so that we can have the discussion, and that sort of quasi vagueness allows the conversation to develop so that we're getting all the feedback from you guys. And it's not kind of stuck where we can only talk about, well, you said no on front yards, like that kind of ends the discussion, right? So here's the full petition. When we eventually provide these to you guys, it'll have a little map of the neighborhood and why you guys are here and sort of the details. It'll have the finalized petition items that you guys choose, and it will have the signature page, and this will be printed on blue paper. We have to have the original signature page with a wet signature on it returned. We cannot accept electronic signatures, unfortunately. So if you have any property owners that are not necessarily local, you'll definitely want to find ways to try to contact them. I know Kidd Springs, they have quite a few property owners that are not necessarily local. They're pretty much landlords, and they've decided to send the petitions through the mail with self-addressed stamped envelopes to get them back to the committee chair, to make sure that they're getting them. And they're getting that outreach. And I know that's a lot in a very short time. Do you have any other questions about the process? I'm sure y'all do.
When did Stevens Park Village and Kidd Springs when were they maybe at our stage?
So Stevens Park Village, we started with them in April of 24. So by the time they get codified, it's about a 2-year process. However, I will say that some of that was not on us. They had a couple of meetings that ended up getting pushed back by several months, because there were quite a few people that were out of town and they didn't want to host a meeting while like half the neighborhood was gone for Christmas, so there were things that got pushed back, and then the city attorney is taking quite a while with getting us our edits back. But yeah, so they started in April of 24. Kidd Springs, we just started with them in June. We had their pre-application meetings and they are now in the petition stage. So they're going around collecting signatures right now. And as soon as they get back to us, we'll start those post-application meetings with them. I will say if they get to us, probably I would say by the end of January, I think that will be a good enough sign for us to initiate our next district in March or April, which is actually earlier than we were hoping for. So my hope really is that we'll be able to get you guys in before 2028. We sure are going to try. And hopefully, some of these districts will move fairly quick. And yeah, we can get that process moving. I would typically give yourself at least 18 to 24 months though for once we officially initiate until codification by city council.
Melissa,
18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And okay. So Stevens Park Village was about that, or it seems like they were more expedited.
They'll be hitting city council probably in April, so they'll be right about their 24-month mark. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Melissa, I attended
Mhm.
the Stevens Park Village meeting with you all back in April, and I think was that meeting one of the first meetings to discuss the development standards after they had their petition approved?
Yes, it would have been, it would have been one of those initial meetings.
And in their case, if I recall, they were only pursuing maybe 5 of the development standards out of the 30 some.
It was a little bit more than that. I think there's a minimum of like 12. Let me pull up their petition. Let's see. Stevens Park Village. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so they had 12 items on the development side. And then they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16 on the architectural side. So they had a pretty solid petition. And here, let me share my screen again so you can see that.
But
And I know
all of that,
it's kind of tiny, but
all of that is defined before you go out for petition, correct?
correct. Because we need to have these items decided on to actually craft that petition for you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once again, I got a question. So,
Yeah.
if this becomes a conservation district and, selling the benefits other than just obviously conservation, does that trigger the property tax abatement for rehabilitation?
It does not. We do not have a tax abatement in conservation. I know that historic has one, and that's tied to sort of the federal, or maybe it's a state tax credit, where like it's very stringent. Like you really have to be following the Secretary of Interior standards on your house, and they're much more rigid. So like if your original structure in the 1920s, say, had wood windows, they would require you to go back with wood windows, whereas we do not. Like, we're fine with vinyl windows. We just ask that it be a style that's appropriate to the style of architecture.
So there's no city local level
For
abatement, right?
abatement, no, not for conservation.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? No, hearing none. Well, if you think of any more, here's my contact information. Feel free to call or email, and you can check out our website. I did have an extra slide with some of the NSO stuff here. And I'll send that via email once I've got the link ready to go, and I'll send you all that information in one email, hopefully by the end of day on Friday.
Melissa, thank you for taking the time and doing this. I know this is an evening project, so we appreciate you doing this for us.
Well, most of our meetings end up happening in the evening, so I'm pretty used to it now at this point. Who knows? Maybe you guys will schedule us a Saturday meeting. Who knows?
We'll try to avoid that. I think we would like to avoid that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's good to meet some of you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yep.